So today we are going to talk about potty training in children with special needs, give some tips and tricks and kind of hopefully leave you kind of understanding your role in potty training your child with special needs, some ways to implement pottying, some similarities to typically developing children, but maybe some additional challenges that your child might face and how to work through some of those challenges. So my name is Lauren George. I am the Family Support Specialist with Child Care Answers. So in my role, I provide a lot of direct support to families, one-on-one or in groups. So that can be kind of communicating back and forth about a specific challenge that you might be facing with your child or in parenting. It may be me just sharing resources or connecting you with a specific agency. And then it may be coming to trainings like this. So we offer several parenting workshops, and we do record all of our workshops and post them on YouTube, so you can always come back to them and watch them. Child Care Answers is also active on social media. That may be how you registered for this workshop in the first place, but we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and very active. We try to post a lot for families and for child care providers on all of those platforms, as well as it's the best place to go to register for all of our workshops. We also have a fantastic page on our website, childcareanswers.com/yourchild. That Your Child page is full of parenting resources, tip sheets, and resource guides. One of the resource guides that has been added most recently is the Guide to Children in Special Needs. It provides kind of a basic overview, whether you are just finding out that your child has a disability or a special need, or you're in transition in some way or fashion. So whether you're transitioning from first steps to the school system, or from developmental preschool into kindergarten, or whether you're in a transition like potty training or something like that. It is chock full of information about special needs, but also special education, and includes information on the family support waiver, which can be accessible to you depending on your child's needs. That can provide some wraparound care, which is really helpful. We will also have our special needs and potty training guide available as well, which is a resource that contains a lot of the information that we're going to talk about today, but as well as some printables. So a planning sheet, a documentation sheet to share with child care, a list of resources for specific disabilities. So whether your child has Down syndrome or autism or a physical disability, there are resources specific to that type of disability and how potty training may look specific to that child. So be looking for that one as well. So a breakdown of what we're going to talk about today. We're really going to be looking at children's readiness signs and how you know when your child is ready to begin the process of toileting. Some barriers that children with special needs may face when it comes to toileting. I think it's important as a parent to really understand those barriers before you ever approach toileting, or really anything in parenting, right? So that you have a plan in place already for those perceived barriers. And if your child does not experience the barrier that you had planned for, that's fantastic. But sometimes it's better to have a plan in place than to hit that barrier and then maybe not know where to turn or not know what to do. We're also going to look at the toileting process and how that looks for children with special needs, as well as how we build their independence with toileting, both in their natural setting at home, but in all other settings. For some children, especially children on the spectrum, they may have a hard time transitioning the skills that they've learned in one setting to different settings. So how do we build a child's independence with toileting across all settings? And then lastly, I'm going to share some additional resources with you as well of places to go to read more about pottying and children with special needs, as well as some places to look for disability-specific information. So that is kind of an overview or a breakdown of what we are going to talk about today. Within this guide, It will contain resources for general toileting for children with special needs, lots of tips that we talk about today, but even more. The process of toileting, some handouts to provide maybe your child care provider or your child's teachers related to toileting so that you're creating consistency across settings. There are also some planning forms within this document or things that you can print and complete and hand to people, whether it's a therapist or a child care provider or a teacher. And then disability specific links. So again, that will be coming to you as well. And is a great kind of one-stop shop for all of your toileting needs when it comes to your child with special needs. So let's go ahead and get started and jump right in. Successful toilet training is within a child's reach, especially a child with special needs. They have the ability to build a lot of independence around toileting, but it just takes a little bit of time and some coaching, as well as breaking down the steps for them so that they're able to really master every step along the way to be able to then be successful with toileting in general. So toileting is really this process that happens over time, starting really from the time that a child is an infant until they are completely independent when it comes to toileting. There are so many things that go into toileting before a child's ever sitting on the potty and actually going. They have to have body awareness. They have to have some sort of understanding of language when it comes to toileting. So whether that is spoken language or a picture or a sign to communicate, they need to be able to communicate in some fashion, whether again that's verbal or nonverbal or using a picture symbols or pointing at visuals. They have to be able to communicate that, as well as they have to have some ability for dressing and undressing and the physical skills to be able to get to the potty and sit for 2 to 5 minutes at a time. So all of those skills can be broken down, and really starting at infancy of talking about the baby's body and pointing at body parts, of having names for body parts, of teaching them kind of that recognition of, oh, you pooped in your diaper, let's clean your poop, let's give you a new diaper. So some language around toileting, and then as soon as they are able to, really involving them in that process of diapering, which is going to lay the foundation for toileting eventually. So all of those things kind of lead us to this point where we're ready to switch to underwear, but a lot goes into it before we ever get to that point. So toileting really is way more than just that time where we switch to underwear and all of a sudden we're eliminating in the toilet. So there are several readiness signs that let us know that a child is ready for that next step of moving to undies or starting the process of practicing sitting on the toilet. And the signs of readiness are the same for most children, whether a child is typically or atypically developing. Generally, the signs of readiness are about the same. I don't want you to get hung up on age, and I tell that to all families, because a child is different than the child next to them. And just because one child is potty trained does not mean the next one is, just because they're the same age. Generally, children are potty trained anywhere between the ages of 2 and 4. And that is a developmental age, not necessarily the chronological age of the child. So as you're looking at your specific child, it's important to consider their, again, their developmental age and not their chronological age. So mentally, where are they operating? And with readiness signs usually falling in that 2 to 4 range, with most children being potty trained to some degree, if not fully trained, by the time they go off to kindergarten. So sometimes taking the pressure off of pottying actually helps the process go smoother, but every child is different. So looking at signs is a better indicator of readiness than looking at age. And as we're talking about signs, these are for most children. So the steps of readiness are guidelines for developing children who have no physical limitations. So children with physical disabilities, it may look slightly different because of their inability to complete some of the steps of readiness. So you may look at the signs of readiness and see one that your child is just not physically able to do, but they have all of the other signs. it probably still means they're ready, and then they will always, or until they develop other mechanisms, need support in that one area. So some of the signs of readiness for physical abilities is the ability to sit upright for 2 to 5 minutes at a time. So children have to have that core body strength and that ability to be able to sit on the toilet, whether it's assisted or unassisted, depending on the child, for 2 to 5 minutes at a time. Because it sometimes takes them time to go to the bathroom, especially for bowel movements, and they need to have that capacity to really sit long enough for their body to do what their body needs to do. We're also looking for the ability to hold urine for at least an hour. This means that we're looking for usual dryness times for about 1 to 2 hours at a time. So instead of constantly having wet diapers, they're going a little longer between those wet diapers or diaper changes, and they are able to hold their urine for a certain amount of time. If a child is not yet able to hold urine, they're probably not ready yet, even if they have all of the other signs of readiness. Physically, they just aren't there yet, and that development will come with time. And then they need to have some interest in or helping with self-care. This means dressing, hand washing, toileting. Some interest is there. If a child doesn't care about dressing and undressing, washing their hands and going to the bathroom, they're not ready for toileting, even if they have every one of these signs except interest. So our goal then would be building interest for that specific child. But typically the interest is there. We're just waiting on the other signs to catch up. And with this physical readiness signs, this really is with no contraindicated medical conditions, meaning that the child doesn't have any medical conditions that basically say that this isn't going to be happening right now. And that will definitely be a conversation that you'll be having with your child's doctor, and something that will be kind of on the forefront in your mind. Some other readiness signs are those time periods in which they're staying dry. So again, going kind of longer stretches between diaper changes. Another sign of this is that they're starting to consistently wake up from nap time dry. So if we are seeing dry periods, then we know that we're probably close to being ready for toileting. As well as having bowel movements that follow a regular and predictable pattern. This meaning that they're not having a bowel movement at every diaper change, that they might poop every day after lunch, or every day in the morning or in the evenings or whatever it may be. There's a little bit more consistency when it comes to their bowel movements. Additional readiness signs around mental readiness and awareness is that they have a cognitive age greater than 2 years. Again, not their developmental age, but that cognitive age is really an indicator of readiness. So we're really waiting until they hit that point. That they can follow some simple directions, so they have the ability to focus and follow through with those one-step directions, like sit down, get your shoes, wash your hands, and they're able to follow through with that. They also have awareness of when their diaper or clothing is wet or soiled. This may look like them pulling at their clothing when they are wet, or if they need a diaper change, taking off their diaper when it is soiled, or maybe verbally or physically indicating to you, hey, I need a diaper change. And again, showing interest in toileting behaviors. So maybe watching you, asking questions, talking about toileting, interested in wearing underwear. All of those things let us know that there is an interest there. It could be being very interested in the Daniel Tiger potty episode, which is one of the things that I knew when both of my kids were ready, that they were very interested in that show. And I'm pretty sure Daniel Tiger single-handedly potty trained both of my children. Thank you, Daniel Tiger. But they would sing the potty song all the time. They wanted to watch that episode. So I knew that potting was of interest to them. And so that helped kind of put all of these together for me and know that it was time to start the process. as well as communication. So children with special needs have varying needs when it comes to communications and varying abilities. They can be very verbal and have lots and lots and lots of things to say and lots of words, to extremely nonverbal and using signs and symbols and pictures to communicate. So it's important that we assess communication based on our child's needs. So they have to have the ability to indicate the need to go, but that doesn't need to necessarily be verbal. That can be through facial expressions, posture, gestures, pictures, words. There can be so many different ways that your child can communicate the need to go, but they have to have that ability to some degree. So example of this is for a child who may be nonverbal that uses pictures to communicate. They would need to have the picture of potty. They would need to know what that means, and they would need to have the ability to show you that picture if they were feeling the urge to go. So in addition to the common signs of readiness, there are also some common barriers that we may need to take into consideration as we're looking at toileting our child or working with children with special needs. And again, children are coming at us from so many different angles and so many different needs that some of these barriers may not be something that you even need to worry about for your child or that your child might be experiencing. But it's just kind of a range of barriers that children with special needs may have that can get in the way of toileting sometimes. So like I mentioned on the last slide, communication and understanding. So they can have a range of communication skills. They also may have very literal interpretations of toileting, which may lead to you having to adjust the language that you use for toileting. Toddlers in general have kind of this literal interpretation of language, which is why I love toddlers so much. An example of this is this weekend we were at my parents' house, and my daughter is 2, she's almost 3, and she was climbing on my parents' ladder. And my mom almost said this and didn't, but then ended up telling me secretively that she almost said it, and I'm glad she didn't. But she almost said, "Why don't you hop down from there?" Well, to some children, especially 2- and 3-year-olds, they would then think, well, you said hop down, so I'm literally going to hop off of the ladder. And that obviously isn't very safe. So children who do have this literal interpretation of language, whether it's a typical or atypically developing child, we may need to cater our language to make sure that they're able to then interpret it and follow through. So for a child, I would not say hop down from there, where with my 7-year-old I would, because he knows that that doesn't necessarily mean to actually hop. So that needs to be taken into consideration. Also, children who have echolalia, who kind of just repeat language. We may think that they have this understanding of what we said because they've repeated it, but sometimes it's just the fact that they're echoing what we have to say, and that we may need to introduce some signs and symbols or some checks and balances to ensure that understanding is there and not just repetition of language. Also, children with limited communication skills may also have limited initiation skills, which means that they may need to explicitly be taught how to use the toilet and how to ask to use the toilet. That may not come naturally to them to say, hey, I need to go potty. So that may be a skill that needs to be embedded within the toileting process to specifically ask or indicate the need to use the toilet. Also, with children with special needs, they may have a fear of bathroom-related stimuli. There's a lot going on in a toilet, especially a public restroom. So this may look like fear of flushing, fear of loud sounds, fear of hand washing, fear of sitting on the toilet and thinking that they're going to fall into the toilet, this balance as they're trying to navigate sitting on the toilet. So there may be a lot of anxiety or fears around toileting. And really that's true for all children, but it may be accentuated with children with special needs. This may also look like being afraid to poop in the toilet. That plop and then the water splashing their butt may not be something that they like and may lead to some sensory issues around that as well. So taking into consideration your child's anxiety or fears overall, and then how that might be kind of shown in the bathroom. Also, health issues may become a barrier. So children who have a history of discomfort with toileting or going to the bathroom, like having constipation or loose stools pretty consistently, a history of UTIs or irregular bowel movements, may delay the toileting process. Also, for children who seem to lack the motivation to go to the bathroom, so say they have all of the readiness signs, it's there, but they just don't have the motivation to go, it may be masking some underlying barriers, like an altered perception of social appropriateness around going to the bathroom, of what their role is in that process and what is okay versus not okay socially in the bathroom. Challenges with attention, organization, and sequencing. So being able to really focus on using the restroom and understanding the process of going, being able to organize all of that. So that is where breaking down the steps and teaching each step and mastering each step individually with a set of rewards or reinforcements can help. And also picture schedules or kind of a visual of the process. Additionally, inconsistent or absent imitation skills. So they're not able to kind of take what they've seen and then use that information for themselves. So I have watched you go to the bathroom, but I don't know how to then translate those behaviors to myself. And then challenging with managing clothing. And this is really seen in children who are having accidents pretty consistently. All of the skills of readiness are there, but they may be having a lot of accidents. And it may just be the inability to remove their clothing quickly enough to go to the bathroom. So looking at clothing and removing that as a barrier from the toileting process. And then this preference for routine. So children with special needs, we all have this preference for routine, but some children with special needs have it amplified, that they need to have this repetitive actions. They may be very resistant to change. So new things like toileting may come as a challenge to them, or they have difficulty transferring those routines or skills to other settings. So I'm really good with toileting at home, but I have no idea how to take that knowledge and that routine when I'm out at Target or when I'm in childcare. Also, a lot of children with special needs have some sensory issues to take into consideration, like their sensitivity to stimuli and textures, whether they prefer it or they do not like it. Being aware of their own bodily cues and having that feeling of needing to go, or the feeling of being wet or soiled. And then just like this gravitational insecurity where their senses are just a little bit off. And then physical limitations, the actual ability to get onto the toilet, to remove clothing, to eliminate, and that poor motor planning, like sitting and standing, or just the ability to hold and wait. It takes a lot to recognize I need to go, and then to be able to hold it cognitively and physically, and then wait to eliminate on the potty. That's higher level thinking skills and can be very difficult, which is why toileting before age 2 for any child doesn't really work very well, because this skill is just developmentally not there yet. That is the skill that comes with time and age. So now that we've looked at the signs of readiness, as well as some common barriers that children with special needs may face, now we're going to look at proper dress and setting up that bathroom environment so that we can begin the process of toileting. So first and foremost, diapers and underwear. And when I say diapers, I mean regular diapers, cloth diapers, and pull-ups. They are all diapers. They all work essentially the same way. Cloth diapers are better in regards to a diaper because they can actually feel wetness, but a diaper and a pull-up and a diaper are the same thing. So diaper's a diaper's a diaper. So children must be able to feel wetness. So once we do kind of transition to toileting and not just teaching the steps and skills to get us there, but once we make that transition to expecting our child to start eliminating on the toilet, we really want to make that switch to underwear. So choosing underwear or training pants with extra thickness should be worn next to the skin. And then a diaper or plastic protector can be worn outside of the underwear if you choose to. This way the child can still feel the wetness on their skin, signaling discomfort, which we want some level of discomfort so that there is motivation there to want to eliminate in the potty and to stay dry and not consistently pee in their diaper. And then we want to make sure that we're changing wet or soiled clothing immediately so that our child isn't experiencing too much discomfort. We want them to be uncomfortable, but not unnecessarily uncomfortable, if that makes sense. So there was a study that was done in 2004 about extended diaper wear, and they basically tracked an adult who was 29 with Down syndrome, his toileting. So they tracked his toileting when it comes to wearing a diaper versus not wearing a diaper, and they found that he was consistently more dry and using the toilet to eliminate when he was in underwear versus in a diaper. Really finding that when a child or an adult is wearing a diaper, they are more motivated to use it than to keep it dry. Translating that information then to really show that diaper use, extended diaper use, actually decreases potty training and does not increase a child's ability to use the toilet. So when we're looking at clothing, as we're making this switch to using the bathroom, really thinking about clothing that can be easily removed and pulled down and up by either us or our children. So things with elastic or drawstring waistbands that aren't too tight, leggings, skirts or dresses that can come up easily. And then I think shoes are something that we often forget about, but Crocs or other washable shoes are very helpful when it comes to toileting, because if a child does have an accident and pee runs down the leg and gets in the shoe, they're really easy to rinse off and continue to wear, and you don't have to wash them. We want to avoid things like zippers and snaps, tight pants or tights, onesies, and overalls. They all just make toileting much more difficult. I love my toddlers running around in rompers, but as soon as toileting starts, the rompers are gone. And it's a sad day because then it means that our babes have grown up, but those types of clothes are not conducive to toileting, and really then shouldn't be reintroduced until toileting is very, very consistent and our child has the ability to self-dress and undress all by themselves. So as we're setting up this bathroom environment, we want to really set our child up for success. Our kind of focus on toileting is to create these environments that allow our children to be as independent as they possibly can. So place items within reach, make modifications to make your child as independent as possible. So whether that's adding steps or stools, adding a specific toileting seat to the bathroom, using a separate potty seat, whatever that may be, to really help make them as independent as possible in this process. Also, up front, you want to determine if there are any preventative measures that need to be taken to avoid danger for your specific child, and then ensure that the sink and toilet are easy to access independently. All of those are going to help them kind of master the toileting process faster if they have the ability to do things themselves. And creating that predictable bathroom routine. So have a routine from preparation to completion so that you have broken down the steps and create a pretty solid routine that you can then set the expectation of this is what happens from the time you sense that you need to go to the bathroom all the way until you have washed your hands and left the bathroom, and broken that down step by step. You want to follow a schedule as determined by your elimination record, which I'll talk about later, but it's essentially a way of tracking your child's pees and poops before transitioning to underwear to get a good idea of when you should be offering toileting in the first place. And then when you are making that switch to underwear, to increase fluids closer to your time scheduled so that there is more of an opportunity for them to actually have something to eliminate. So now let's look at the toileting overview. So here are kind of the steps. So I know my child is ready. I've picked out the appropriate clothing and I have that on hand. I have undies on hand. I have my environment set up with my routine. I have my picture schedule available. Like, now what? So number one is to increase their awareness of the toilet while adding visual supports and reinforcements, defining any medical or non-medical issues that may be a barrier to toileting, introducing the toilet and building comfort, and then finally teaching initiation and building independence. So number one is increasing awareness. So increasing awareness can be simply having your child watch you use the restroom. This can unfold naturally as a child is just naturally curious about toileting, but it can also be very intentional as you're trying to increase awareness for your child. If maybe it's not something that is unfolding naturally. So Touch Autism on their website has several social stories around toileting that are fantastic, as well as Common Sense Media has an entire list of apps designed for children with special needs. Specifically, there's some on toileting that you can search and read reviews on. I also love the Daniel Tiger Stop and Go Right Away app, Elmo Potty Time app, as well as the See Me Go Potty app by Ava Kid, which they can create kind of themselves in the app and see themselves go to the bathroom. And that app was designed for children with special needs to be able to kind of go through the steps of toileting through this app virtually instead of necessarily through them. But this is a great opportunity to find what is your child motivated by, what character do they love, and then go that route to really encourage and build awareness when it comes to toileting. So if your child is obsessed with Thomas, find an app about Thomas and potty training, or a book about Thomas and potty training. If your child is obsessed with Elmo, do the same thing. If your child is obsessed with dinosaurs, then find a book about dinosaurs going potty. A book around dinosaurs and going potty is a book about dinosaurs wearing underpants, and it's about how the cavemen made undies and the dinosaurs loved them so much, and the reason that dinosaurs are extinct is because there was this war over underwear and the cavemen won. And it's super cute, and that the cavemen were embarrassed because they were naked because the dinosaurs stole all of their undies. So that can be a fun way of building interest around toileting. There are also two great books for you to read, The Potty Journey and then Toilet Training for Individuals with Autism or Other Developmental Issues. When I send you the handouts, you'll be able to just click on those pictures and it will take you right to Amazon of where you can purchase those books. As well as there's a lot of books for children around toileting. All of these things will help increase their awareness and build interest around going to the bathroom. Also, as you're increasing awareness and adding supports, the first step is that visual support. So creating kind of this visual schedule. For some children, they need visuals that are the actual environment that they're using. For others, kind of these general pictures from like a PEX system work really well as well. So Do To Learn, you can print toileting pictures for free, as well as Autism Speaks Toileting Guide has printables that you can print as well to create this visual schedule that works for you and your family. Additional supports are reinforcements or rewards for going to the bathroom. So we want to really actively reinforce the steps of toileting at the earliest point or the weakest point, meaning that skill that our child is struggling on or we know that they're going to need some extra support in. We want to pair tangible reinforcers with social praise. So having something that they can hold, like an M&M or a jelly bean, alongside of our social praise. And then we can fade our reinforcements depending on what we need. So either increasing or decreasing. So what this looked like for my daughter when we were toileting is that she would get one M&M for just sitting on the potty. So the first step was just building that interest in awareness and comfort on the potty. So she would get an M&M for sitting, regardless of whether she popped right on and off or she sat in clothed versus non-clothed. As she built her comfort around toileting, we would phase those rewards out. She may ask for them over time, and we'd give them when she asked, but they weren't just readily available because her reward then switched to sitting and actually trying to eliminate. So your pants are down, you're sitting on the potty, you're doing more than just hopping on and off. You're not sitting just to get an M&M. You're actually trying. And this usually works really well at diaper changes or before and after naps and meals. Once she was going pretty consistently, then we started rewarding just for actually eliminating. And then we've been able to kind of phase those rewards out now that she's almost 3. She will ask for a treat from time to time and still gets reinforcers because she's 3 and she hasn't fully achieved 100% independence around toileting, which won't come for another year or 2 as she phases out diapers during nap and sleep. And there are still occasional accidents. So that kind of gives an example of how reinforcers can be phased in and out and how it almost happens naturally as a child masters the skill that they're not looking for those reinforcers as often. Reinforcement is best when it is immediate, so it happens right after the act. It is a powerful reinforcement. So she loves her num-num treats, which is what she calls M&Ms. And so if she didn't like chocolate, an M&M would not be a powerful reinforcer. So you have to kind of find that reinforcer specific for your child. And that it's not accessible otherwise, meaning the only time she gets an M&M is for going potty. That is the only time that she gets that reinforcer or that treat. So again, it's creating power behind the reinforcer because that's the only way that I can then achieve that reinforcement. Also, the use of an elimination record that I mentioned before, and there is an elimination record included in the potty guide that I will send you next week. But it's basically a way of tracking over a 2-week period some baseline data about when your child eliminates so that then you know how to create this schedule around encouraging your child to go based on when you know that their body is going to need to go. That then can be used to create this toileting plan worksheet. So this is a way of filling out our goals and our routines, as well as language we will use around toileting, the environmental needs and any tools or modifications and rewards that can be used not only for yourself to create a toileting plan, but also to give to other people caring for your child, whether that's grandma, a babysitter, childcare, developmental preschool, or the school system, so that there's, again, creating consistency around toileting. So the next step is that introduction of the toilet and building comfort. So we really want to provide a lot of opportunities for our child to sit and try on the potty. So taking them before we know that that time frame shows up on their elimination record that they need to go, offering lots and lots of opportunities for them to try and sit on the potty, ideally getting to the point where they are going. Usually at first it's you're just catching it and then they realize, ooh, I made pee-pee, how did I do that? And then they're gonna wanna do it again and again, especially having those reinforcers there. So after we've built this comfort and they're going pretty consistently on the potty, then we're basically fading our prompts by using reminders. So teaching initiation by giving verbal reminders and visual reminders. So I'm going to tell you it's time to go to the bathroom, or I'm going to use a timer to indicate that you need to go. And then I'm showing you the reinforcer. Here is a picture of going to the potty. Here is a picture of an M&M. Remember, if you go to the potty, you get the M&M. I had a little boy with autism that I worked with as a para, and he would see that visual and he would just repeat, I go to the potty, I get a treat. I go to the potty, I get a treat. Like talking to himself about like, we can do this, I'm gonna get that treat. I'm gonna go to the potty and we're gonna get that treat. And so that really helped to make that connection and then start that initiation process. We want to frequently prompt and then reinforce when they request to go. And then it is helpful at this point to kind of change your reinforcements. So I give you 1 M&M if I tell you to go to the potty. I give you 3 M&Ms if you do it on your own. It can also help at some point to increase the amount of time between being prompted to allow your child that chance to experience a full bladder to then be able to initiate it on their own. If they never feel that sense of fullness, then there's never that motivation to initiate. And lastly, it's teaching toileting in unfamiliar settings. So I've mastered toileting at school, or I've mastered toileting at home, but now what do I do when I'm out at Target or I'm out at the zoo? How do then I translate that knowledge to that setting? So from the parent perspective, it's really important to be prepared. So have your child use the restroom before you leave home. Locate restrooms wherever you are, so you always know where they are, and if your child indicates the need to go, you can get there quickly. And then it can be helpful for children who really rely on those visuals to take pictures for the next time to use as visual cues. And then I always like making a toileting bag. So my diaper bag actually then, when my children are going through potty training, kind of transitions to my toileting bag. So I will bring along any visuals or timers that I use for toileting anywhere that I go. Carrying children's familiar items, especially if a child is sensory sensitive. So if they need a specific fidget or they're chewy, that you're bringing those with you all the time. And then don't forget your reinforcers. So always carry those wherever you go. We always had a little baggie of M&Ms that carried with us everywhere so that you can reinforce pottying in every type of setting that you're in. When it comes to pottying in other settings like childcare, there are rules and regulations around offering treats or rewards for toileting. So your childcare provider may come back and say, I can't give them an M&M for going potty here. So I think what's important to note is, yes, they cannot based on licensing and the food program. However, if it is written into your child's IEP or IFSP, it can kind of trump licensing regulations. So if it's part of a goal written down by your therapist or part of your family plan and an IFSP, then it can be utilized. And sometimes it's just a matter of letting that child care provider know, or engaging with a third party so that they are kind of getting some information and some background information about how that may look in their setting. How do I help your child toilet and give them an M&M when no one else can have access to M&Ms? And immediately they may be thinking about this equality piece, right? I don't want your child getting an M&M if nobody else can. But then when we recognize that every child is different and their needs are different, and just because this child needs that reward after potting does not mean that the other 9 children in the classroom need it. And that everyone's needs are a little bit different, and that's okay. So equity versus equality comes into play. So oftentimes that can kind of be a barrier to following that same plan in childcare. To just know that that's just an additional conversation that you may have if you do get pushback about using reinforcers in that setting. And then with pottying, accidents happen. So accidents are typical. They're part of a learning process. Falling is part of learning how to walk. Peeing in your pants is part of learning how to stay dry. So we want to make sure that we do not scold or make our child feel shameful for going in their pants. Accidents happen. And so accidents may happen for a lot of different reasons, especially if your child was not having accidents and then started. It may be due to some sort of change in their routine, like their health or their diet, sleep, stress, medication, a new sibling at home, a move from a crib to a toddler bed. It may be from Passy being taken away or the loss of a comfort item. There may be a lot leading to accidents, and usually they're temporary. So we want to make sure that we're responding to accidents very matter-of-factly. It's just a stage of pottying. It's part of going through it. So again, avoiding scolding or shaming our child, but pointing it out. Oh, you peed in your pants. It's okay. Accidents happen, but you're going to help me clean it up. And then we want to make sure that the consequence for an accident is non-reinforcing. And when I say consequence, I don't mean that the child goes to timeout or is in trouble. That is not the consequence I'm talking about. When I'm talking about consequence, I'm talking about what happens immediately following the accident. Because what immediately follows an accident can either discourage or encourage a behavior from happening. I'm having a tantrum and I'm given a cookie. You've reinforced the tantrum, basically telling the child the consequence of having a tantrum is getting a treat. So if for a child, if they're obsessed with cleaning, my child has vacuum videos on YouTube because it was his thing when he was younger. So cleaning was his thing. He could use a broom like nobody's business at age 2. So if the consequence for him is that after an accident he gets to clean it up, that may then reinforce more accidents. So you may have to be creative in finding other things to clean up so that it doesn't become a reinforcer. Or maybe that's not something that you encourage as the cleaning, that you handle that end of things. If the consequence that happens as the result of an accident is a lot of one-on-one time with you, that may be then reinforcing it. So finding other opportunities for building one-on-one connections so that it doesn't just happen as a result of toileting. If having an accident avoids having to use the potty in general, then that can be a consequence that's a reinforcer. So you just want to kind of look at what's happening at the end of the behavior to see if it's discouraging or encouraging further behavior. So as you're looking for more resources on toileting, there are 3 really great tools out on the web. So Tri-State University has a toileting children with special needs and children on the, it's specific to children on the autism spectrum, but it really covers across the gamut, a PowerPoint slideshow, and you can just Google that. The American Academy of Pediatrics via healthychildren.org have toileting tips for children with special needs, and they have a lot of tips for specific disabilities. And then Vanderbilt University has a toilet training and developmental delays toolkit as well. Included in that resource guide that you can find at childcareanswers.com/yourchild is included as a resource and links for disability-specific information related to toileting. So there are links specific to children on the autism spectrum, children with cerebral palsy, children who are deafblind or hard of hearing, children with Down syndrome, and then children who have multiple disabilities or physical disabilities, all related to toileting that may be a little bit more specific to your child's needs. Child Care Answers is a part of a network of childcare resource and referral agencies across the state. We service Hendricks, Marion, and Hamilton counties, but there are people like me all across the state. So if you're needing some direct one-on-one support, if you have specific questions, or if you're looking for additional resources, I can always connect you to the right person if you do not reside in Hamilton, Marion, or Hendricks counties. And so I am going to leave our contact information up. So my name again is Lauren. So it's just laureng@childcareanswers.com. So I provide kind of that one-on-one support for families who have children with special needs. But if you are maybe not a family member, but you work with families, Chrissy and Benito may also be a resource to you as well. And if you need support, you can complete our family info form. It's just bit.ly/CCA family, or you can text CARE to 833-222-1221, and it will get you our family information form that you can complete and get connected with a specialist. So thank you guys for joining, and take care.